The Williamsburg loft, with its floor-to-ceiling Manhattan views, had seemed like the ultimate achievement when we first moved in. Laura had called it our urban oasis, while I'd privately thought of it as the world's most expensive Instagram backdrop. We'd sold everything in Chicago: my sensible Honda, her collection of impractical vintage dresses that required dry cleaning after every wear, all for this fantasy of creative professional success. The drummer living upstairs played like he was auditioning for a Metallica cover band at 3 a.m., and the garbage chute smelled like a biological hazard. But we told ourselves this was the price of living authentically in New York. Before we moved, Laura and I had always seemed financially compatible, or so I thought. When we first met, she was the kind of woman who found joy in flea market treasures and DIY home projects. I remember one of our first dates, a bookstore crawl where we spent hours picking out used paperbacks, sipping cheap coffee, and daydreaming about the future. But somewhere along the way, dreaming about the future became curating a perfect image for it. The modest pleasures we once enjoyed turned into curated experiences designed for social media validation. That night, I was losing badly in Warzone to what I suspected was a particularly vicious 12-year-old from Texas when Laura emerged from the bedroom, holding a wine glass like it was a murder weapon. Her natural makeup look, which required more products than a Sephora display, couldn't hide the tension around her eyes.
Gaming again?
The way she said gaming made it sound like I'd been caught injecting heroin. It's market research. I lied, right as my character took a sniper bullet to the face from XX_Skullcrusher69_XX. Fast-paced environments build decision-making skills. Laura's stiletto tapped an impatient rhythm on the concrete floors, the same floors we'd paid extra to have artistically distressed during renovation. Those shoes probably cost more than my first car, and judging by how she winced with each step, were equally uncomfortable. The realization hit me suddenly. If she could drop $250 on deconstructed tiramisu at some pretentious Brooklyn eatery last night, why couldn't I have the gaming mouse I'd been eyeing? Babe, I began carefully, what would you say if I wanted to buy a $250 mouse? Her laugh could have frozen lava.
You're joking, right? Do you know what these shoes are doing to my plantar fascia?
She thrust one Louboutin-clad foot at me like Exhibit A in a murder trial.
I have literal bone bruises.
As she ranted, I found myself mentally cataloging our expenses. My monthly clothing budget barely covered 3 graphic tees and the occasional sale rack jeans, while Laura's work wardrobe expenses could fund a small nation's textile industry. My food spending went mostly to pizza consumed standing up in the kitchen during her clean eating phases, while her business lunches seemed to occur exclusively at restaurants with more Michelin stars than menu items. The argument that followed wasn't so much a discussion as an archaeological dig through every financial resentment we'd ever buried. By 3 a.m., we'd reached what lawyers would later call the beginning of the end. I could have my mouse if she took 60% of business profits instead of 50, and if I covered the internet bill myself. Fine, I said, already imagining the cool matte plastic under my fingertips, as if it weren't just a mouse, but a grenade with the pin already pulled. Deal. 2 days later, when the package finally arrived, I tore it open with the reverence of a man unearthing buried treasure. The box was lighter than I expected, just 89 grams of engineer perfection, but it weighed on my conscience like a dumbbell. Every time I ran my thumb over its matte finish, I remembered everything I'd traded for this. The arguments, the late-night negotiations, the avalanches of unspoken grievances. But when I plugged it in for the first time and felt how perfectly it fit my palm, something clicked. This wasn't just a mouse. It was a passport to a world where I got to decide. That mouse became my personal declaration of independence. The first week after its arrival, I committed small acts of rebellion that felt downright revolutionary. buying name brand cereal instead of generic, ordering pizza with double cheese without submitting a formal request, purchasing socks that came in matching pairs and lacked holes. An experience so novel I nearly wept in the Target aisle. I was a prisoner testing the limits of newfound freedom. I bought 2 packs of cookies instead of one, set up autopay for subscriptions Laura didn't even know about, and once, scandalously, ordered delivery past midnight just because I could. Laura noticed, of course. Her gaze skimmed over the new additions to our home like an airport scanner, but she stayed quiet. Maybe she sensed the shift. Maybe she understood that this tiny gadget on my desk wasn't just a toy. It was the first stone in a foundation of something different. And when I caught myself one evening not mentally calculating the cost of my next cup of coffee, I realized this wasn't rebellion. It was air. Laura observed these developments with the bewildered expression of a zookeeper watching a trained seal suddenly demand voting rights.
You bought socks?
She asked one evening, staring at my feet like they'd committed treason. Not just socks, I corrected proudly. Mid-calf black dress socks, the kind adults wear. The business, meanwhile, began thriving in ways we never imagined. Turns out when you're not hemorrhaging cash on brand-aligned experiences and aesthetic workspaces, you can actually invest in practical things like Google Ads and competent employees. Laura insisted our sudden success was due to her networking read. Instagram posts featuring our products artfully arranged next to cappuccinos. But the numbers didn't lie. Our profits had quadrupled since I'd stopped letting her approve every expenditure. 6 months into our financial détente, I committed my most brazen act yet. I booked a trip to Miami without consultation. Not some work-adjacent brand retreat, but an actual vacation with no purpose beyond drinking mojitos and not checking email. When the confirmation hit my inbox, I half expected Laura to burst into flames from sheer outrage. Instead, she just stared at me across our absurdly expensive dining table, French oak, distressed by actual French artisans, and said quietly,
You've changed.
I sipped my coffee, properly brewed, not the microdosed cold brew elixir she preferred, and considered this. No, I finally answered. I just stopped pretending to be someone I'm not. The divorce papers arrived exactly 11 months later. Laura's lawyer, a shark in Prada who probably billed more per hour than our first apartment cost, claimed my financial infidelity had broken the marriage. My lawyer, a blessedly pragmatic woman who wore sensible shoes, pointed out that Laura's spending habits could qualify as a form of domestic terrorism. In the end, it cost me $78,450 to learn what that $250 mouse had really been worth. The understanding that love shouldn't require bankrupting your sense of self. These days, when friends ask how our picture-perfect marriage collapsed, I tell them the truth. It started with a mouse and ended when I remembered how to say 2 important words, no and lawyer. Then I gestured to my pristine gaming setup, complete with $400 noise-canceling headphones and that original, now battered mouse, and add, best investment I ever made. The headphones came into my life 3 months after the divorce was finalized. I'd gone to the electronics store to replace my old pair, determined to splurge on something nice for myself. As I stood debating between models, a woman's voice cut through my thoughts.
You'll want the updated version. The first batch had connectivity issues.
I turned to see a woman about my age, her hair piled into a messy bun, wearing the most practical sneakers I'd seen in years. There was something refreshingly real about her. No pretense, no carefully curated image. Just a person who knew about headphones. We ended up having coffee across the street, the kind that came in actual large sizes and didn't require a tasting menu to appreciate. Her name was Rachel, a freelance graphic designer who'd recently walked away from a high-paying but soul-crushing agency job. I realized I'd rather make less money and actually like my life, she said, stirring her coffee with a kind of unself-conscious ease I hadn't seen in years. Now, 6 months later, Rachel's headphones live on my desk next to mine. She claims it's just practical storage, but I notice they're here more often than not. Last week, she threw my grown-up socks at my head. "Put these on, your feet are embarrassing," before stealing the last sip of my coffee, the kind I can drink whenever I want in a home that finally feels like mine. The business? Thriving. The loft? Now mine alone, though I still haven't fixed that mysterious hole in the couch. And Laura? Last I heard, she's dating a hedge fund manager with a prenup thicker than the Bible. As for me, I'm sitting here, drinking properly brewed coffee at 3 p.m. in my matching socks, listening to my upstairs neighbor's terrible drum solos, and feeling, for the first time in years, like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. And if I ever forget the cost of freedom, I just pick up that battered old mouse, run my fingers over its worn buttons, and smile. Because sometimes liberation comes in unexpected packages: a gaming peripheral, a good cup of coffee, or a woman who appreciates you for who you are rather than who you could pretend to be.